So a couple things about the presentation today and the key concepts, and really I want to focus the concepts around integration. Now there are some things I'm going to show you that are really nice additions to the application, but for the most part, we're going to travel through a workflow of integration with the Sage estimating system. And no other system out there has the integration like this. So what do we get from that? Well, of course, we're going to get some time savings. When we have the capability to get away from double entering information over and over and over again, well, it's going to save us a tremendous amount of time. And of course, minimize the double entry that goes on with that. So a couple concepts to think about as we go through this presentation. How much time is this going to be saving us when we utilize a system like this? The other thing that we look at when we double enter detail data, what happens to that? Well, we sometimes position ourselves, or we may risk entering the information incorrectly. And the number of times that we're entering that data multiple times, that just increases that risk that much more exponentially, so to speak. So we want to give you the capability with a seamless integration to minimize that particular risk potential. And then, of course, increase the efficiency within your organization. One of the things I think about with other solutions that don't have an integration with the Sage estimating application is we are doing that. We're entering that information into the assemblies, items, whatever takeoff method you're using. But then what happens when we need to get into review mode and see what's over in the plan set and review what's happened there? Well, we might have to travel over there, and hopefully our naming convention is really good on how we named what those takeoffs were. So what in the estimate equals that takeoff in the digital takeoff world? Well, we don't have to worry about that with the eTakeoff integration that we have. So with those couple things, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go through the presentation here. So I'll jump over into the eTakeoff solution, and for those of you that are not familiar with it, we're going to travel through and get you familiar with it, but also show you the functionality that you can take advantage of within the system itself. So of course, this is the viewing pane that we have right here. It's going to have the page that you're going to be doing the takeoff on. By the way, we are a multi-user environment. If you didn't know that, we do have the capability to have multiple individuals within the organization work on the same plan set, the same page at the same time. We track all of that, and I'm going to kind of expose it as we go through. Over here, we have a list of all of the plan pages that we're going to be doing our takeoff on. One key thing is with this solution is it reads PDFs in their native format. So gives you the opportunity to say, hey, here's those PDFs, those 100 pages, whatever it may be. Click a button, boom, we've loaded them up. So it doesn't take minutes, hours, days, dare I say days, it doesn't take that long for any application, but it does it very quickly. Within 30 seconds, we've loaded up 100 pages real quickly. Up here, we do have what we call our trace library, and a trace is no more than a digital marker on the plan. Excuse me. So when you're doing your takeoff of whatever your business focuses on and quantifies on these plans, that's what these digital markers will do for you. Pretty quick, pretty easy to work with. So a couple things to think about as we're looking at the takeoff. First of all, the system will not let you do a takeoff on a page that does not have a scale. Bottom line. So there's a protection for you right there. Got to have a scale. And we, of course, do imperial and we do metric. So it gives you that flexibility to do that. But one thing I will put in here is if there is no scale, well, we can, of course, put not to scale. So every time you do a takeoff, of course, you're going to determine the length of whatever, or the square foot of whatever that is. Calibrate, we're going to give you the capability to validate what your architect or upstream partner is giving you with those plans. Whoever created those plans, we're going to be able to calibrate and validate that those are the correct scales. As we look at some of the flexibility with the solution, it is important to have multiple pane windows, so we can see the detail and the information. By the way, as you see what I'm doing over here, I don't want to have to travel through the tabs up above on the ribbon. So what I've got is a quick access toolbar that I'm utilizing. Now, a quick access toolbar, by the way, gives you the capability to customize it specifically to each individual's needs within your organization. So Bob may have a different set of shortcut keys than me. So it gives you the capability to customize it specifically to each individual. But back to this. Now we can see these additional pages. We can have as many of these pages as we want, as many as you need. And of course, you have that additional window. We'll just float that over to that other window. Now we're reading the specs, the scopes, the information, the detail as we go through and do our takeoff. Now, the other thing that we look at is navigation through the system. I'm zooming in, out with my mouse. I'm moving things around. It's very easy to do. Well, same thing is with the pages that you're moving through. Notice I've got a page here, page there, back in the back takeoff area here. Well, I want another way to get to other detailed information. So I'm going to use the window, but I'm going to use what we call named views. Now, as you look at this particular view right here, you're going to see some bars around this, or should I say a border around this area right there. The solution has multiple scales per page, multiple scales per page. So we don't have to copy a page and name it by its scale. We have as many scales per page as you need. So that saves a lot of time. There again, we're minimizing the effort that you have to put into this so that, well, we don't have to have 5 pages with a different scale for each page. We can have as many scales on one page as we want. So let's transition this over into my pane right here. Again, navigation, pretty easy. So I'm going to zoom in and look at this particular takeoff or set of takeoffs that I've already done. This one here has been sent to the estimate. Well, of course, as with most jobs, we're going to need the capability to bring in those revisions and be able to compare one to the next. Now, of course, I've done a takeoff on this page already, right? I've taken off this carpeted area, all these other things right there. And it takes me back to the days when, I've been working with Sage for about 20 years. We went through the digitizer years and all of that fun stuff. And when those revisions came in, sometimes we'd have to start from scratch, just depending upon how many changes there were. And we'd be, of course, put the vellum over the top of the page. Lots of fun things that happened back then. But nowadays, we just do the comparison. Red is old, blue is new. And I say, well, okay, based upon this particular takeoff, all I want to do is make the changes to meet the need of that takeoff right there. Now, of course, downstream from this, we expect something to happen, right? That's a change. That's changed the square footage of this takeoff. Well, I'll get a little bit into that when we get to bridge. And that's where you're going to see some new things that have happened with the bridge application. So let's navigate. Let's jump over into a page. Again, navigation is pretty easy. I just use a little hyperlink and it take me to that page. Now, if you want to go with the more another route to move from one page, we can just double click on these pages over here, so on and so forth. So you'll find within the system, it gives you the flexibility, the variety to do the same thing multiple different ways. And that's what's really nice about the system. So in this case right here, we're going to do a takeoff of this pool area. And when we do this takeoff, it's very quick, very easy to do. I'm going to click all of those points as you'd expect. Now, if I am a unit price contractor where I get the square foot or get the perimeter or the linear foot, whatever it may be, and apply a dollar amount to each one of those units, this system out of the gate, out of the box, when you install it, will get you 4 quantities right when you get started with the system: point, length, perimeter, area. So I'm ready to go. I can take advantage of that area and apply that. It's, for these pavers, it's $5 a square foot. Boom, we're done. Makes it easy right out of the box. But we want to, of course, equal what we're doing in estimating. Our estimating system, of course, when we look at that, we've got assemblies, we've got items, And they all have, well, not all of them, of course, but we have variables that would be associated with that. So if you look at concrete, of course, we're going to order concrete in cubic yards, but we're going to take it off in square foot. We need a calculation along the way. We need to be able to enter that depth. So with that being said, we come over here. Well, first of all, let's not get too far ahead of myself. I've got this paver area out here, but I want to subtract a pool. So very quickly, very easily, I go around these corners, and we've got the capability to use the shortcut key that I mentioned to round that off to that. Now, the future that we're looking at here is, and it's coming in the very near future, is we're going to be able to click on that line and boom, that takeoff is going to be done. So that's in the very near future, and that was one of the things I was hoping to show today, but it's coming, it's right around the corner. So in this case here, this is a different takeoff. This is a different material, everything else that goes along with this would be a different assembly or item. Well, when I want to do that, fill in this cutout with that, all I got to do is go to my library of traces, double click, and now we've taken that off, of course, perfectly to the extraction that we did there. Now, a couple things that you're going to notice. First of all, there is an E right here. That is another safety net that we put in place because we know that we have some variables to answer to this assembly we've associated with this trace or the item, whatever it may be. We've got an alert that says, hey, Darren, you better fill in the additional information. We don't want to leave any money on the table. We don't want to miss anything. Now, we get into review mode, and we want to make sure that we give you that same safety net. So these are all the takeoffs that have been done on this particular project. Notice that E right there. Oh, by the way, multi-user, Bob's been working with me on this project here, and you can see I've done quite a bit more there, but Bob's also done some takeoff as well. Lots of capabilities, lots of things we can do here. I'm not going to jump into that, but let's get this done. Let's go ahead and complete this. Got a pop-up window, says, hey, it's going to be 4 inches in gravel, sand, 4 inches sand, maybe it's going to be 6 inches in concrete, and it's going to be 4,000 PSI. So when you think about the assemblies that you have within your database or items that have variables, we're going to exactly match what those are. No other system can do that. Of course, working with our Sage estimating system, no other system. So when I look at that, I can say okay to that. And now that E is going to, of course, turn blue. Pretty cool stuff. Now, if we go over here into carpentry and we say, well, let's do some wall framing. Same thing, different set of questions. So whatever the focus of, or the vertical, the focus of what your company does, and you've got the Sage estimating solution, hey, we're going to be able to equal those variables. And I'm also at the end of this presentation going to show you one of the new things that gives you an opportunity to start with eTakeoff. If you purchased eTakeoff today and you have the Sage estimating product, you can be working with it with a full trace library in a day, no problem. So with that being said, height of the wall, stud spacing, stud size, whatever that may be, number of corners, we'll just put 3. And if we're doing gypsum wall or our drywall, we'll say 10 foot, so on and so forth. Variables, once again, matching exactly what your assemblies would be right there. So pretty nice. And there goes our E. So let's do some things that we can do downstream from this. Let's just call this wall. Let's over here call these pavers. I think they're already named pavers, which is awesome. And let's call this pool. Pool in presentation. Good enough. So just to give you another example, one more. Of course, when we do a takeoff of carpet, we're going to do a takeoff in square foot, but it's going to be, of course, ordered in square yards. So with that being said, let's just take advantage of the 2-click and enter in that detail as well. So give you a little bit of a variety of what we're looking at there. And by the way, if I answered the wrong thing, We go in here and say, okay, we're good to go. So with that being said, now we're ready to take the next steps. But before we do that, a couple things I want to look at in here is over in these. I kind of didn't allude to the panels and the things that we've got over here, but these panels offer us a tremendous amount of functionality. Not going to get into each one of these, but we will get into a few of them. So for instance, we've got favorites. Well, let's say that this particular plan replicated itself over and over and over again. Well, I don't want to have to go through the painstaking process of taking off all of the carpet for this floor. Well, I can very easily just drag and drop whatever I've saved over there, and we're good to go. So with that, we have the capability, the flexibility to do that very quickly, but also make a change to this. Some systems, when you look at like maybe a typical group, yeah, you can't change it. You're pretty much stuck with that takeoff. This one, each one of these individual takeoffs can be changed. And we'll call this floor 2 carpet. Say okay. Now, that is a project favorite. Of course, global favorites approved. Maybe we'll have some clouds. Maybe we'll have some other things that we want to put out here. We want to give you the capability from job to job to job. If anything replicates itself, you've got the ability to just sit and place them out here, like the approved stamp or whatever it may be. The next thing that you look at here is, of course, the tremendous capability to do counting. Now, of course, with the system, with our base system, the advanced application, we got two different varieties of the solution. One with a more increased or a loaded feature set, so to speak. But with the advanced, we can just go through manually and count things. It's laborious. It takes a lot of time. So I used to be a landscaper. If the plants are really set out very nicely and the icons or what represents those plants is very clear, we can automatically count all those plants. Well, back in the day, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, a lot of repetition of counting. In this case, why not have the system do the heavy lifting for us? So in this case right here, this sprinkler head, we're going to go ahead and find the sprinkler head in here. We want to find all of those sprinkler heads when it's located on this page. Now we can define search areas that make it specific. We don't want to count everything on the page. We just want to count a specific area. We can do that. So system, go out and find all of those for me. And while the system is doing that, I can go through and do takeoff. So if I needed to, I could go over and just do takeoff as it was doing the counting. And that's the way the system is built. It doesn't consume the focus of the application. So go get my coffee while it's doing the counting for me. I can basically continue on doing my takeoff until it completes. Now it went pretty quick, as you can tell. And when we look at this, now it gives us the opportunity to review all these. Now it is giving the indicator that it found this down here, but it's saying it may be questionable as far as the percentage is concerned. So if we said it was 75% up here, then we'd be covered in that situation. But let's say that for whatever reason, these are suspect. Well, let's go check them on the plan. So the brown ones are suspect right there. We can say, oh, okay, well, oh, that one looks right. Double click on them, green them up. But let's say that these ones are incorrect. So giving you multiple facets of doing your review and looking at those particular sprinkler heads right there. Now in this case, what I'll do is I'll purge the unselected, get rid of them. Let's say that these ones are a different sprinkler type, sprinkler head. I'll do save and continue. I'll select another head, and now I'll count those. So it goes out, puts out the broad net, if you will, And then we can do the counting of each individual item with that broad net. So what we did was that broadcast net is what I should say, and say save. So now we've counted all these, and I'm going to name these here. And let's call these sprinkler head. Let's just call them sprinkler head. It's good enough. We'll know that that's what that is when we look at it. So here's some advanced functionality though, is when I look at this, I don't want to just count one page at a time. I want to count multiple pages. So with this being said, I'm going to go out, I'm going to search multiple pages. It's already done. Boom, done. So with that being said, now we've got multiple pages we can count at one time and still continue to do our takeoff. So pretty powerful stuff. And it does boil down to the number of cores that your computer has. So if I had 8 cores, 7 of those cores would be used. I can do 7 pages at one time. If you have questions about that, let us know. So looking at that, now we've gone through the process of doing all of this takeoff, and let's jump into the bridge. Go to automatic here, and I'm going to expand this. So let's go ahead and refresh the list. So here's the thing that where we start looking at streamlining the process, because every one of those variables, every one of those questions that we have within an assembly and item, we have those individual answers that we need to be able to send over into the estimating, rather than taking a quantity, plopping it into an assembly, and then go through the assembly separate from what I've done here. Other solutions have to do that. We don't. One thing I will note here, and this is pretty powerful stuff before we go on to the next step, is if you're a progressive estimator or do progressive estimates, and what that means, 25%, 50%, so on and so forth, complete. When we look at that, of course, we do the comparison to do those revisions and make the changes to the takeoffs, but we also want to give you the functionality. And here's kind of one of the nice little changes that have happened, is we want to give you the capability to back up the entire project. So with that being said, if I was at 50% complete with this, let's say next. This solution is going to grab all of the estimates that have created with this, all the bridges that are created with this, and all of the plans with all of the takeoffs where they are at that point. So it's taking a snapshot of all of that detail and information and allowing you to, hey, got a snapshot? Well, here we are at 50% complete. Take it and then move on. There's some comparative analysis that we can look at between those 50%, 75%, 25%, whatever it may be. But this solution gives you the capability to wrap all that up, zip it all up, and tie it off with a bow, just so you can have it for later on, looking at any analytics that you may do. So that's one of the very nice things that have been added to the solution. Now, as we get into looking at the takeoffs that we've done, of course, the system is going to compile all of those for me. But it's also going to give me the capability to break it down between what Bob has done and what I've done also. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just send this over into the estimating. Now, one thing that you look at with the solution is if we, let's say that we, of course, well, we get these plans, they're hundreds of pages. It's going to take us some time to get that done, right? Well, we leave at the end of the day and we say, okay, let's send what we have to the estimate. Well, when I come back tomorrow, I've got a couple of things I can do this with, but on the plan set, we can hide everything that's been sent to the estimate. I'll just click the hide button. Now, the other thing is we can review those things as well. Now, you'll notice one thing that's a little bit different between these lists here, or at least one thing that is different, is this guy right here. Well, that's changed. Remember how I told you that we'd looked at that and I made the change based upon the revision. Well, with that change, we're looking at a difference of square footage, of course. Went from this to this. So the system is going to alert you to those changes. Bottom line, it's going to tell you, hey, you've got a change. Do you want to review it? Well, looks good. We're going to go ahead. We expected it to be different. And now we're good to go. Okay, couple things in here that are really nice within the system that we're going to take advantage of, and then we'll take a look at the estimate. Jump over here. Let's say that the spec is changed on any one of these particular takeoffs that I've done. For those of you that you look at the variables of items and assemblies, you say, okay, well, this has changed. All of these pads have changed. Well, maybe we needed to increase the PSI, whatever it may be. So in this case right here, I'm going to just draw a circle around all of those, and we can go in and look, the PSI is different for each one of those. Well, let's make the change. Well, let's do this. Let's say 6, and let's say 5,000. Say, okay, we just changed every one of those pads as far as what the PSI and the depth of the concrete as well. But let's take it a little bit further. Within the system, you have the capability to go to variable lists and say, well, it's not 6,000 for all of the pads. We can change every pad. Maybe we had concrete pads on 10 pages. Well, instead of doing that, just like I did there, we have one central position where we can say, you know what, it's going to be 7,000 PSI for all of those pads. Well, I've got to do one more thing. I've got to apply all. Say okay. Say okay. Now we go to these guys right here. They're 7,000. So wherever that pad is represented in this particular plan set, we've just changed it for every one of those. Now, jumping forward here, if we look at bridge, we refresh, well, as you would expect, all of those pads have changed, and even the one in the pool in the presentation has changed. Well, I just want to go ahead and update that. And I don't think today is the 15th, I think it's the 25th. And we'll change that date too, just for accuracy's sake. Okay, so now we've just updated the estimate. We'll go to the estimate. And we look at this. And now we've got all of these items, of course, with the estimating, we can combine items, like items together. So now we've just created that estimate, all of this information, this detail. And let's change the look. I always like to give a little color when we're doing some takeoff. Of course, this gives us the capability to easily visually see what category I'm looking at, labor, material, so on and so forth. But with that being said, now we've gotten the takeoff done. The estimating's got that already started. Of course, you go in and do your takeoff of the non-digital takeoff items. But let's jump over into the location. So as I was writing in the details and the information, the description of each one of these, I've got hallway, I've got pavers, I've got pool and presentation. We've got the details for the pool. So downstream from that, not only are we going to adhere to the database and the way that the database is created in a CSI 1648 division, however you built your database, but now we're going to have the capability to use WBS codes as well and location. So we're doing all of that right within the digital takeoff solution. Well, there's the tile, there's the wall, there's walls on number 4, and not only that, we're going into, well, there's the estimator, there's downstream from that, we can say who did what within the estimate as well. So pretty powerful stuff. And that's all happening from, of course, the digital takeoff. So that's the seamless integration we're looking at. So if I went over here and manually went through this and had to do, then I'd say, well, when it came review time, where did this come from? Well, another step right here is what we can do is look at the assembly, and we can see my wonderful notes in here of the change, the 7,000 PSI that's been taken off right there. So we're getting that that item taken off. So it's given us not only that, but it's given the capability to make notes that are specific to those takeoffs and have that flow downstream. Go into the review here and look at my past audit, and now I can see those additional notes that we're looking at there as well. So pretty powerful stuff. Well, as I've mentioned several times, and I'm going to go over to the location because I want to go back to the pool. Let's expand these a little bit. This little ticker symbol that we have right here, that is an indicator that that came from Digital Takeoff. So that's telling me, hey, Darren, this came from Digital Takeoff. Well, if we need to revisit that for whatever reason in the review process with the chief estimator, well, we can say, oh, okay, well, I can show you where that came from. Now it's going to take us right back to that pool area right there. So there's the bidirectional integration that you look at that is so powerful. And of course, there's the detail that you input as you went through the process of taking that pool off. Oh, okay, so that's what you did. We're in good shape and we're good to go. Now, here's the thing that you look at that is been added, not too long ago, but it really speaks to those of you that aren't using the eTakeoff solution. And when I'm working with customers, I've been working with Sage for about 20 years now. And when I look at that typically the race to get to working with the system, deploy the system, and take advantage of the ROI that we talked to you about. Well, there's some objections that come up along the way. How long is it going to take me to build the trace library? How long is that going to take me to get that up and going, up and working with the system? Now, training is training when you get into the system. Of course, we've got videos that walk you through it and everything, but really the integration, setting that up, and the mapping that goes along with this. Well, what we've done recently is we've created a tool that looks at whatever database you're using. You got to be on the SQL version, of course, but looks at the database you're using and says, well, let's make it easy for this company to get up and working with the system. So we come in here and we say, let's find the database that they're working with, and let's build out their trace library. Let's do that for them. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I don't care. It's not found. Okay, boom. So with that being said, now what it's done is looked at your database and said, if we see each, that means it's a count. So we're going to create a count trace. So look at all of those things that we've created just on the fly. You know what we've done with our research is we found that we don't really have a color coding system. It gets pretty random after a while when we have so many items. So you can change the colors if you need to. You can make them what you want, and you're good to go. Now, of course, it looks at the assemblies as well. So if I show the incomplete assemblies here, and I go down into my concrete, so if I want to see those particular assemblies, you'll notice they're red. Well, we need to go in and we need to make a change to those. Well, it's pretty quick, very easy to do. And I'm willing to go through the process to show you what that looks like. So we look at these guys down here. It says cubic yard. We'll say area. It creates it for us. There's some mapping that we have to do. But here's a lot of variables that you may have within your assemblies. Well, we go, hey, let's just create the extension form, do that, and we're done. Any WBS codes will automatically be mapped for you that you use on a continual basis. And with this process, we can get you up and running in no time. So that's why I say when we look at the digital takeoff, getting up and running in one day or the next day, Well, at least our trace library and all of the mapping and all of the things that you do, like I just showed you today, it'll just automatically find those things for you and you're good to go. So this tool, Trace Utility, we created that to make it very easy for you to get up and working with the system. Have a great week, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care now.